Welcome to this week's Weekly Wind-Up, our news roundup of what's happened in Kirklees. Today we are discussing, does it matter if your election candidates don't live in the ward they want to be elected to? Muslim women in prisons, a report which lifts the lid on some challenging issues that Muslim female prisoners face once they have been released from prison. A local health firm scraps its nurses' bonus after directors scoop a huge pay bonus. And finally, we'll be taking a look at the annual Sikh parade for Vaisakhi. Joining us today is Denzil Nurse, chair of Honeyzz Diabetes Support Group, Huddersfield. Welcome, Denzil. With the election day looming ever so close, an article in the Examiner asked the question, does it matter if your election candidates don't live in the ward they want to be elected to? An unscientific poll on social media was very mixed. For some, yes. For against, yes. And for others, they just didn't care. Denzil, do you think you should be in the ward and be the councillor rather than living outside of the ward and then becoming a councillor?
Personally, I don't think it matters, really, whether the person lives outside the ward or in the ward. What is more important is how close they are to the community, the kind of empathy they show to the needs of that community, and the way they demonstrate a fairness in how they provide to the community. So once they can meet those standards, I don't think it really matters whether they live in or out of the ward.
So what about the Polish community, the Irish community, perhaps the African Caribbean community, Muslim community, Sikh community, those communities who are technically silent in the political process?
Well, I mean, the politician has to be aware of that, but the politician needs to know his community, and if there are groups that have a small voice, those have got to be heard, and it's the politician's duty to raise those voices or encourage those voices to be heard.
Okay, so well, that's interesting you say that, because 1972 Kirklees was formed, and this might be a surprise to many people out there. It's never had an African Caribbean councillor, or make I put it better, it's never had anyone from the African descent community. This year we see Amanda Pinnock, and also Amanda Pinnock in the Ashbrow ward, and also Douglas Morgan in the Linley ward. What do you think those chances are for those?
Let me first say that it is not for the effort of us trying to get onto that into the political arena. My experience goes back years when there were black candidates wanting to get around and canvass, and the reception that they got from the community was hostile.
What, from communities that they didn't live in, or that they did live in?
They did live in.
Okay.
Yeah, and so as a result of that, the candidates got a bit disheartened, you know. The other thing that I also noticed at that time is that when those candidates are put forward, for whatever reasons, they are normally put into the wards that they are not really part of. For example, I remember canvassing for one candidate in the early days, where this candidate was put into a almost white area, and he and I had to be canvassing on those doorsteps, and what we got back was pretty hostile in those days. Now, I felt that that was not fair on the people who have selected those candidates, to then put them into an uncomfortable situation in a ward that they would be hostile to. And that is where the party should recognize that they need to put someone in a ward that they have a good chance of being elected.
Okay.
And that has got to be taken into consideration even now with Amanda and Douglas.
But that's the point I'm saying then. So surely where you live would arguably be better to be a local elected councillor there than opposed to hopping from one community where you live into another community to serve.
Yes, I understand that. And that would have to be taken into consideration when they are electing people. If that person has a better chance of being in their own community, so be it, put them in that community. But if that person is not from that community but have an empathy to that particular community, then it will work. You know?
Kirklees prides itself on cultural integration, and I must say it's a beautiful place to live. It's got a status of the town of sanctuary, yeah. But I come back to this political process about let's say the gay, lesbian, transsexual, or bisexual community. Where's their voice, right? It's almost like something is it's underground, it's never discussed. Where's their voice in the political process? Will this election bring out those voices a lot more than what we've seen over the past 20, 30 years?
And I would say that those voices need to be encouraged to be heard. And that's a role for the politicians and for the council. Yes, we know that there are groups who are very small, haven't got a voice, but if this council is going to be fair, right across the board, it will speak on those voiceless behalf and encourage them to raise their issues and things like that. We've had that situation with the African Caribbean community, and we know that the African Caribbean community is not politically active, but yet there were no proactivity to get them to speak up until it comes around to the election, and then you see the politicians.
Okay.
Yeah.
Why don't you think then the African Caribbean community, or let's say the African descent community, is not politically active?
Well, we've always been not politically active. We aren't political animals, you know. It is something I'd like to change because we've come into a society that demands that we are politically active. Mm-hmm. We have never ever been.
Is there a particular reason? Because you were born in Barbados. When did you come here?
1960.
1961 you was here. And you're saying since 1961 to your knowledge, we've never been politically active as an African descent community. What's the reason?
Not en masse. One or two people have been like that. I'm thinking of people like Stanley Innes who have been politically active and encouraging people. But because, I don't know if it's because our voice is so minute that we think it's insignificant, you know. But now that we've got two people, Amanda and Douglas, we should begin to get the mass behind them, but also get the sitting politicians to encourage them to be like that.
So final question on this issue, because it is the election year, almost 2 weeks' time, innit? We're all going to know what's going on. How do you feel about, do you think to represent these minority groups or marginalized groups, you have to have a representative inside the chambers when they're discussing it? So therefore, let me give you for an example. Do you have to be a woman to talk about the women issues inside the elected inside the chambers? 2, do you have to be black to talk about black issues? Or 3, do you have to be gay, lesbian, or transgender to talk about those issues? Because it doesn't seem that any of these issues are ever discussed. Here we are on coming towards another election, and it's the same old I'm hearing.
Sadly, I think that women have to be representative of women, gays representative of themselves. Because our society is not educated enough, and I'm putting it to the politicians as well. They're not educated enough to speak for the mass across the board. there will always be prejudice against one group or the other. Depends on how their preferences are. But also,
you're not saying that's not democracy then?
Well, it isn't democracy, but that's the way it works.
Is that as good as we're going to get?
Yeah, yes.
Okay.
And until we become educated enough, or until we are sufficiently a just community, that's how society is, you know?
So we're saying that the politicians reflect exactly what society
Absolutely.
is. Okay.
Yeah, and I'm not even mentioning the fact that they're canvassing for votes and they have to go where the votes are, and the votes follows the larger communities, or larger communities brings their votes, you know, so they will always have a bias towards that community.
Okay, we're going to take a short break, and coming up we will be looking at the challenges for Muslim women in prisons.
However large or small your business, attracting new customers requires dedication and a lot of patience. Just like fishing, but you also need the right gear. Rods,
reels, lines, hooks, sinkers, lures, tackle box, tackle bag, net, bait, gas gloves, clothes, pocket knife, lunch.
or you could simply advertise with KLTV. Online, grow your business and your clientele. KLTV, your vision made reality. Should have gone to KLTV.
A report about Muslim women in prisons have been written by Sophia Bunce and Ishtiaq Ahmed from the Huddersfield Pakistani Alliance community, which has brought national attention. Sophia has been working at Her Majesty's Askham Grange prison near York and Newhall prison near Wakefield. Sophia has been working there 14 hours a week for the past year and has come across some extraordinary barriers that Muslim women face in prison. The report cites some of the barriers: cultural and religious stigma, both inside and outside of the prison, isolation once they come out of prison, health issues, gender differences with Muslim men and women in prison. Masood Ahmed, OBE, Director of Community Development Muslim Hands, who commissioned this work, states, "The trend of Muslim women in prisons is something which has come into significance in the UK over the last decade. Some choose not to believe that Muslim women in prisons even exist, as the subject is embroiled in stigma, taboo and shame. There is an attitude that these women are bad eggs and should not be discussed or supported, let alone rehabilitated." So Denzil, so you see the problem here now. So the women have gone into prison, the cultural aspects and expectations of Islam and the religious aspects of and expectations of Islam. When a woman goes into prison and comes out, they're ostracized. But when the men come out, they're welcomed back and they look to be, the families look to rehabilitate them and support. And it's almost like the whole Muslim community comes out and supports the men. And it's caused a right ruckus, this report, because it's lifted the lid on the Islamic community that perhaps a lot of us didn't know. What's your view on this?
This is the first time I've heard of this report, and truthfully, I struggle with the topics of women in prison in general. Women in prison, the reports that I've read states that the reasons for being in prison are usually not of their own making. They are either pushed into that kind of situation, but the fact that they're in prison means that society fails, or society is not getting the benefits of what women offer to their families and society. Putting a woman in prison means that her family suffers, her children suffers, all of that suffers. That's my view in general, irrespective of what the crime is.
So are you implying then a woman could murder someone and she shouldn't go to prison?
No, I didn't say that.
Are you saying that irrespective of the crime?
Yeah, irrespective of the crime, the society suffers and the
Okay.
family suffers.
Okay, yes, yeah.
Right. There are some crimes that where women needs to be in prison, but my feeling is that those are few and far between. The majority, from my perspective, is that they are there as a victim of either society or circumstances.
Well, I was at the conference yesterday
Now-
about the launch. The launch of this report was yesterday. It was like a conference stroke launch of the report. And those things were highlighted of what you're saying is that some of them was domestically abused. There were also issues of grooming and all sorts of things. And it's not me saying these things because I love all these diverse communities. It's just what's been said in the report. So the women are there because of society's norms. However, it seems to be double jeopardy for the women because when they come out, they're then being punished by their community.
Yes, and that's part of the cultural aspect of society responding to their own problems and needs. We have the same thing in the African Caribbean community, African descent community, especially with mules and things like that. And that's really where education in the community comes into play. You know, we have to tackle these taboos and try and get people back rehabilitated in society. We probably need to hold a mirror up to the community and say, you're treating the men this way and the women this way. Is that fair? You know, that kind of thing that we probably need to do.
It's a real interesting one because in the Islamic community, there are a set of principles, rules, regulations, and expectations, religious, but then culture plays a different role. And it's so intertwined, it's a very, very complex.
Yeah.
So to educate the community on these issues is one thing, but does that, or it might counteract the religious aspects. By educating them, it might actually counteract what they expect from women religiously.
Yeah, I understand that. And as I say, we need to get back into the education, into the community. The mosque and the imam has to play a very big part in this, you know, in educating the community of how we either keep women out of prison, or if they're there, take into consideration the reason why, but also give them a second chance.
Well, everybody deserves a second chance.
Yeah.
Whose responsibility is it then? Is it just the communities, or is it also the state, i.e., I don't know, social services,
I think
if there's children involved?
I think primarily it's the community,
Okay.
as far as the Asian community is concerned.
You think it's,
You know, yeah,
why
because we as a Western community, Western society, would get ourselves into all sorts of different issues because we're then wanting to tackle the religion and the culture, and we are not educated enough to do that. We will only get ourselves into hot water. So we have to encourage the community to tackle this themselves.
Okay, well, I said, well, once the community has tackled it themselves, then they should then approach the authorities because they have rights as well.
Yes.
Yeah? Okay, thanks for that, Denzil. Sure. Locala, a not-for-profit health firm, scraps nurses' bonuses after directors scoop a huge pay bonus. Robert Flack, CEO of Locala, gets £26,000 pay rise. The staff were told by email that the company will not be receiving its £40 reward voucher because they cannot afford it. It's also revealed that Locala's 4 directors were awarded a sum total of £66,000. On paper, it does not read right, but you know, Robert Flack, he seems to be a very intelligent man, worked hard, got to a stage in his career where he can earn £26,000 bonus. That's not even some people's wages in 2 years. But morally, there seems to be an issue that how come they can't pay the staff £40? What's your view on that?
I'm a bit ambivalent on that one, to tell the truth, because I have been at the level where I see the hard work that directors put in to move a company forward. And to tell the truth, without the directors of Locala, Locala would not be there. And if Locala is not there, people haven't got jobs. So it's up to the directors to secure those jobs for people. That's one part of the ambivalence. The other part is that I think that this has been dealt with very insensitively. In a time of austerity, in a time of cutbacks, we know that people in the private sector tend to defer their bonuses for fear of opening the can of worms. And that's what they have done, open this can of worms. How can you say to someone, I'm going to hold on to my bonus, but you can't have your vouchers? You know, and if they were transparent in what they were doing, the workforce would not be up in arms, and it would not have hit the newspapers, because people would have understood. In the same way I can understand that a person who is moving a company forward to secure it will need that bonus or will need incentives to continue to do that.
And earned it.
And earned it.
And earned it.
Yes, and has earned it. So it has come down to having dealt with this thing pretty insensitively, you know.
Or the directors, you think?
The directors, yes,
Okay.
have dealt with it insensitively, you know.
Okay.
And they need probably to go back to the workforce and give a reason why they can't have the bonus, and they may want to add, you can't have it this year, but we will see what can happen next year.
Yeah.
That will pacify.
Yeah, I agree. If just to let them know.
Yeah.
But I do not think we should deny people their bonuses of these companies because they work extremely hard.
Yeah.
But at the same time, there is I think a moral and ethical obligation to ensure your staff are informed and know. And if you're going to get £26,000, it's wise to
be
give
transparent.
your staff that.
Yeah.
Okay, thanks. If you want to comment on this particular story, then you can comment on this story on #Locala. And the big question, should Mr. Flack receive his hard-earned bonus, regardless of its workers? We'll take a quick break and see you shortly.
However large or small your business, attracting new customers requires dedication and a lot of patience. Just like fishing, but you also need the right gear.
Rods, reels, lines, hooks, sinkers, lures, tackle box, tackle bag, net, bait, gas gloves, clothes, and pocket knife roach.
Or you could simply advertise with KLTV. Online, grow your business and your clientele. KLTV, your vision made reality. Should have gone to KLTV.
Hello and welcome back. On Sunday the 19th of April, Huddersfield witnessed a colourful annual Sikh parade for Vaisakhi. The parade marks the day in 1699 when the 10th Guru Gobind Singh founded the Sikh community. The procession started at the Sikh temple in Far Town, stopped at the Hindu temple in Zetland Street, Huddersfield town centre for refreshments before proceeding to the Sikh temple on Prospect Street. Vaisakhi is both cultural and, more importantly, to the Sikh community, is a religious celebration. There were over 1,000 people attending from all over Yorkshire.
Okay, first First of all, Vaheguru Ji Ka Khalsa, Vaheguru Ji Ki Fateh. Today is Vaisakhi wala din, and today is very important to all Sikhs because in 1699, Guru Gobind Singh Ji formed the Khalsa Panth, and this means, obviously, he asked for 5 heads from the Sangat, and he said, come forward, please. We want to give your head to the Guru and create a Khalsa, which is like...
The Khalsa means the pure one. What does the pure one mean? He gave us his appearance. It is the day that he gave us the 5Ks.
The 5Ks, everybody who's in effect a baptized Sikh or a fully pledged Sikh will have the 5Ks.
And we have to stand by it. And the motive behind that was to fight injustice, irrespective of caste, colour, creed, religion. It's to fight injustice. It doesn't matter where it happens in this world. In honour of that, we always have this on a yearly basis where we take our Guru Granth Sahib, our holy scriptures, from one Gurdwara to the other to commemorate this great event that took place in 1699.
What the 5Ks are is the first one's hair, so you can't cut your hair. Second one is the Gura, which is the iron bangle, which signifies that you are one with the Lord. And then the third one is the Kirpan, which is for protection and never for hurting anyone, so it's to self-defense as well. And then the fourth one is the Kashana, which you can't see, which is underneath, which it's for protection of your, it's called it Jatsat, it's your reputation, and it protects you from the evils, the 5 evils. And then you've got the Ganga, which is in the hair. It's a small wooden comb, and you're supposed to do that twice a day, which is when you do it, it's quite powerful because it gives you that boost, and it's keep your hair, keep it clean. But it also reminds us, because if you've got dead hair, it reminds you that the values. So if you've got good values and good deeds, that's when bad falls out. That's the whole mindset of it. So that's the 5K. Personally, Vaisakhi to me is when the 10th Guru made us, basically made such a beautiful path and pant, as we call it, which is it's brotherhood. And in this, all the bad stuff is just gone. Like, you've got a perfect, basically made you into a Superman or a Superwoman. That's what Guru Gobind Singh did. Made us into Supermen, Superwomen, so that cutting out all the bad stuff. And then there's, whenever you need help, you see a Sikh and you're like, he will help you straight away, no problems.
Do you know much about the Sikh community, Denz?
I know it's been in Huddersfield for a long time, and I've been into the temple, and I know what the different festivals are. I've attended a Vaisakhi gathering, not this year but last year, and I understand what it's meaning to the community, to the Sikh community. It should have a wider connotation for Kirklees community, because what it does, it demonstrates that here is one part of the diversity of Kirklees, where it is made up of not only the Sikhs, but African descent community and their festivals, and others have their own, the Chinese community have their festivals and things like that. One of the good things about it, about these festivals, is the education it brings along to educate a whole community. Because after you've gone to those festivals, you have to come away understanding something about it. And that can only draw a cohesion into the community. People will now understand what it's all about. When you watch the clips from the Vaisakhi festival, it is explained what the symbols are, and you then walk away thinking, oh, that's what that's for, that's what the turban is for, and that's how it's done, and those sort of things. So these things have meanings and symbols and value to those community, and it acts as an education to the wider community. It only can engender tolerance and acceptance, really. Yeah.
And rightly so, Denzil, and I think the Sikh community is a beautiful community. You go in any of the temples any time, there's always somebody in there.
And something to eat.
And something to eat.
Yes.
Even when you go in there and you don't want to eat something, they give you something to eat. So I think, long may it continue, and other festivals. Okay, thanks, Denzil. Well, that's all, folks. I want to say a big thank you to Denzil Nurse for coming and joining us this week. And if you feel you want to comment on any of these stories that you've heard today, then please contact us on info@kirkleeslocaltv.com or Twitter @The Weekly Windup. God bless you, and see you all next week.